So growing up, I've had to face a lot of obstacles, and this is kind of hard for me to talk about, but it's going to come out either way. I've had to face like school, work, fights, relationships, but one of the hardest obstacles for me was coming out with my sexuality. I am bisexual, and today I want to convince you to support the rights of same-sex marriage. So according to balancepolitics.org, it says, as of May 14, 2013, gay marriage has been legalized in 12 U.S. states. They are Connecticut, Delaware, Iowa, Maine, just a couple more, Rhode Island, Vermont, and the District of Columbia. I'm going to talk about why I believe it should be legal for 3 reasons. One of them being that nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it say that marriage should be between a man and a woman. It will allow the same marriage benefits as heterosexual couples, and it will give them equal rights as any American citizen. The first reason why I believe that gay marriage should be legal is because it does not state in the Constitution that it should be strictly between a man and a woman. According to the First Amendment, like in free speech, it states that a person's freedom is protected under the law. So that means regardless of your race, gender, sexual orientation, or anything, you have the freedom to exercise your personal views. And then according to another quote from balancepolitics.org, the U.S. Supreme Court declared in 1974's Cleveland Board of Education versus LaFleur that the freedom of personal choice in matters of marriage and family life is one of the liberties protected by the Due Process Clause. And I just believe that every individual has their own freedom, just to do what they want, especially get married to who they love. The second reason why I believe that gay marriage should be legal is because it will allow them to have the same benefits as heterosexual couples. Meaning that marriage affects things in society, we all know that, such as tax filing, joint ownership of property, insurance benefits, and the main one, critical medical conditions. So by banning gay marriage, it would mean that hospitals cannot legally allow gay partners to visit their spouses because they are not considered a blood relative or an immediate family member. So by legalizing it, it would allow visitation rights, and it would allow you to be able to visit your spouse. And according to a quote from Miserelli, it is unfair to deny these privileges to people because their relationship doesn't fit the state's definition of one. So I know that if I was in that position, I would want my partner to be able to come visit me, and I know most people would want that too. They wouldn't just want family members there, they would want the one that they love to be able to visit them. So lastly, gay marriage should be legal because it is an issue of equal rights. By legalizing gay marriage, it can mean that couples would be able to be happy in their lives, and by banning it, it is depriving them of their those equalities, and it would be considered discrimination. Regardless of gender, marriage is marriage, and it's a human right and not a privilege, I believe. So according to another quote from Milan, denying marriage to 2 individuals who love each other is to deny them a fundamental freedom. So another example, in the 50s, interracial marriage was illegal, but society believed that it was an unjust law because it's kind of ridiculous. So they legalized it, and I just believe that gay marriage is no different than that. So today I've talked about why gay marriage should be legal, just because the Constitution, it will allow marriage benefits, and they will have basic equal rights. So as you can see, gay marriage is a controversial subject. So today I hope that I proved to you that gay marriage should be legal because, be it a man or a woman, I want nothing more to get married. Thank you.
All right, Bobby, what did you think?
I liked it. I thought it was really well organized, and each part of the speech followed well and flowed together, I thought, and was well put together. The only thing, I think it was, I don't know if it met the full time. I think it was a little short. Yeah. But yeah, I liked it overall.
So it's a Danny DeVito speech. A little short. Okay.
That was good.
All right. Well, I think the opening is pretty good. You personalize it. You've got a discussion of what your topic is. There's a good preview of where you're going to head with this material. So structurally, I think you are in solid ground most of the time. I do think that the secondary points need a lot more development, though, on them, because there's a presupposition, for instance, about what some of these things mean and how they're going to be interpreted that needs some proof to go with them. You make a reference to the First Amendment. You're not really quoting the First Amendment. You're talking about some other element of the Constitution, and later on, you even identify what element of the Constitution that is by citing the Supreme Court case from 1974 that talks about the Due Process Clause. So that's really where the whole argument comes from, the constitutional provisions there, not from the First Amendment. And so I think what you need to do is you need to have a stronger argument that says that there are certain rights, in particular marriage is one of those, that should not be controlled by the states. And use your example of the previous miscegenation laws that prohibited interracial marriages in some states. And point out how they were overturned under certain court rulings, and develop that as an analogy a lot more. As it is, it just feels underdeveloped. You kind of make this argument that says we should be free to marry whoever we love. And, you know, I think there's a point at which everybody says, well, up to a point that's true, but we love a lot of people that I think most of us would recognize as we shouldn't be free to marry them. So, and that nobody wants to do that is a different question about than whether or not they have a right to do it. And I think that you need to develop that argument as well. You kind of treat it as if they should have a right to do it, and don't really talk about the consequences of having other options. And you know, I don't want to get into all the stupid stuff that people argue about as illustrations of these points. But if you're going to argue for a value principle, then you need to have something that's a little bit more consistent and has been developed a little bit more. The second argument, talking about what the potential benefits are or what the needs are that people have who are, let's say, in a gay relationship or committed relationship, and they aren't married, then they aren't entitled to particular rights. The main thing that you talk about here are hospital visitations, and I think you need to develop that a little bit more. I've got to be honest with you. I live a fairly narrow life, but I've been in the hospital a lot. Nobody ever asks me anything when I go to visit somebody in a hospital. I mean, what floor are you going to? That's all I've ever been asked. You know, now maybe there are some hospitals where the policies and procedures are dramatically different, but that's pretty much been the limitation, except like in the emergency room. Then it was a little bit different. I do remember something like that was different when there was an ambulance kind of thing. But if you're visiting somebody in the hospital, where is it that they're being denied those rights? You need to tell us a story. Tell us what the practices and procedures are. You're just giving us the talking point on this issue without really developing the argument. And it feels like part of a speech instead of the whole speech. And that's the same thing with that third point as well. So, like I said, I think you've got the right supporting points, but you are not developing those supporting points as extensively as they need to be done. And you need to build up a lot more emotional power to these arguments as well, because let's face it, the idea of an injustice or somebody being treated unfairly, that ought to get people riled up, and you should have a good story about somebody who was treated that way so that we can respond to them emotionally instead of just giving us this kind of abstract discussion of First Amendment or due process rights. Show us where these kinds of bad things are happening so that we can care about it a little bit more. All right. Thank you.